I am Heidi van Woudenberg. I work as a sustainable entrepreneur since the beginning of last year. And I work on projects in the field of climate adaptation, energy transition, and circular economy. And before that, I have been a banker for almost 30 years. And I realize Jasper told a lot about the more financial part of greening. And now you will even have more information on the financial part of greening. So there's a lot of money things going on. And that is because money can be a barrier to greening because it costs a lot of money. But if you use it well, it can also be an encouragement for greening. And that is how I looked at the money thing. How can we use money to be encouraging the greening? I had my presentation in Dutch and I translated it for you into English, but I think not everything is translated. So if there's any questions about the Dutch words on the sheets, don't hesitate to ask questions.
And to add, Heidi was part of our team in the last year and made a large contribution to the project like that. So she was amongst us for a long time.
Thank you, Ron. Well, I will tell something about the value of ecosystems, in addition to what Jasper already told. And the main thing is about an idea how you can use ecosystem services to generate cash in order to have money to invest in green for the government, but also for private building owners. Well, I call it the triple green. I worked at a bank that had a triple A status, so that's why I talk about the triple green, if I look at the value of nature. And I think this will be kind of familiar to you. You have actually value on three parts. Green gives value in an economic way because buildings increase in value. Like Jasper told, some research shows that real estate value increases between 4 and 8%. If you have a green shopping area, it attracts extra customers and therefore extra shop revenues. And also it's a more attractive environment for businesses to work in. So there's an improvement of the business climate. And in the second pillar, you see that green also has a lot of advantages on the nature part. The city becomes more climate adaptive and there's more biodiversity. And the third pillar is about a healthy living environment. And I think you will know the advantages of that part. And we have some figures about the third one. Like in a city in the Netherlands, 39% of the citizens use the green areas. Is there a question? Okay, I just heard something. 39% of citizens use green areas in the city for sports, and more than 50% use the green areas to walk, and 30% to bike. And the last one I really like, that research shows that children living in a green area, there is 15% less obesity. So that's a quite important thing, I think, on the health part. So there's value on the economic side, on the climate and nature side, and on the health side. So actually triple green. So green offers a lot of benefits, and these benefits we call the ecosystem services. If a company offers services, we are used to pay for the services. But actually, nature offers its services for free. And although we all value nature, we are not used to pay for it. And well, that is something that could trigger your mind. Why not? And how could you change that? Have a different mindset and make it worth also in monetary terms to invest in ecosystems. Well, this is some of the societal challenges that not only cities, but also cities have, like heat stress, drought, flooding, societal challenges related to climate change. But there's many more, like water pollution, air pollution, carbon emissions, biodiversity loss. So there's a lot of societal challenges. And the ones that are in the first row are all societal challenges that can be influenced by green and blue. And the effect of green and blue you see in the third row, like cooling down, like storing water, like cleaning the air or cleaning the water, or having less noise. So there's a lot of positive effects of green and blue on the societal challenges. And the societal challenges come with a lot of costs. And if we focus on the societal cost of climate change, heat stress, drought, flooding, you see the first three. And if you use green to become more climate adaptive, those societal costs actually become societal benefits because you are able to reduce the cost. Well, I gathered the information for Alphen aan de Rijn. In Holland, we have what we call the Klimaatschadeschatter. It's an instrument made by several universities and other knowledge institutions, and they calculated not only the effects of heat stress, drought, and flooding, but also the cost of these effects. And they have calculated that for every city. And if you have those information for Alphen aan de Rijn, you see that heat stress leads to less working productivity, people dying, people getting into a hospital. And that will cost, on average, €400 per citizen until 2050, so in about 30 years. And if we look at drought will cause problems to the foundations of buildings, to roads, to the sewage system, to public parks, to agriculture, costs for fires. Now, all those costs together are more than €4,000 per citizen until 2050. And the same is for flooding. It will cause damage to buildings, to infrastructure, to vehicles, hail damage, and that is almost €1,000 per citizen until 2050. And if you add all these costs and the city of Alphen, without the villages around Alphen, has 80,000 citizens, that's quite an amount, €448 million until 2050. For each of the years, it's €14 million of costs that we will have in the future. And this is even in the scenario of unchanged climate. With the changing climate, these costs will be much higher. Well, I took out a few of them. If we look at these costs I just showed you, you have the 14 million cost per year. If green would result in 50% less damage, that would give you a budget of about 7 million per year to invest in green, which is quite an amount. And if I take one of the things out of the economic vitality, the real estate appreciation, if the buildings in Alphen would increase in value by 4% because of the green that is realized, the value would increase with €469 million. It's a one-time increase, not yearly. The other one is per year. But that's a lot of money that you could use for greening the city. And in the third pillar, in Holland, health costs is more than 80 billion a year. And a lot of the money is paid to cure people that are ill. And if you would invest only 1% in prevention, for Alphen aan de Rijn, that would give you a budget of 3.7 million a year to invest in green. And it's all the same green. So once you invest it, you have financial advantages on many other issues. And this is an example of a park in Dordrecht. There is several small parks and they will be connected, and of course extra green will be realized. And in this business case, it shows that the costs for making this park are much less than the benefits. The benefits are 3.7 much higher than the cost for investing in the green park. So there's a very positive business case on increasing the green in the city itself. And what wondered me is if there is so many green benefits and they have so much value, you have a very convincing business case. Normally, when you work in a company and you see all those business cases at the bank, normally you would invest immediately. And still you see there's much reluctancy towards investing in green. So why is that? And how can you change it? So how can you remove the barrier to invest? Well, there's some regular things that you will all have in your country and cities, like governments that give subsidies if there is not a profitable business case. There's governments that provide cheap loans. And sometimes there's also collective benefit holders that pay for ecosystem services, like a water company that will pay for water that has been collected and stored. But these three possibilities, they have their limitations because the government needs to have budget, and budgets are always limited, and it is allocated for a certain project. It is not widely available to everyone. So I was thinking if you could be able to create a market for ecosystem services, it is much more available to everyone, and money is almost available unlimited. There's a lot of money in the market. Interest rate are very low at the moment, and there's much willingness to invest in sustainable things. So would it be able to capitalize on ecosystem services by creating a market? So what you do nowadays, you go to the internet and you look for examples that might help give this idea more content. So what I found is that the energy suppliers in the Netherlands, they greenwash their grey energy by buying certificates of origin of, for example, Norwegian energy companies. So that's something they pay for. And I think a much more known example is the carbon credits that the European Union introduced with the ETS, European Trade System, where the big companies that have a lot of carbon emissions have to pay for those carbon emissions. And there's an actual market where the prices have gone up for a lot. It was 30 euro cents when it was introduced, and now more than 50 euro per ton is being paid for 1 ton of carbon emission. And I found in my newspaper that last year Tesla made a profit for the first time in its existence, not because it sold a lot of cars with a lot of profit, but because it sold its carbon credits for 1.3 billion euros. So that is quite serious money. And something that also triggers me is the thing with Bitcoin. Suddenly we had Bitcoin and it has no intrinsic value. It gives no dividends. And still everybody buys Bitcoins. Even my 19-year-old son buys Bitcoin. And it really triggers my mind. Why do people do this? And it's just a matter of supply and demand and expecting prices to go up and the fear of missing out. So if this works with a lot of other things, why could this not work for ecosystems? Well, I think thinking on that part, some steps need to be taken in order to create a market for ecosystems. You have to be able to quantify it and to measure it. And you have to be able to express the quantity in euros. So you have to monetize the ecosystem services in order to create that market. And also you will need a financial instrument, like the carbon credits have been introduced. You also need to introduce a financial instrument for ecosystems broader than that. And of course, the certificates, the credits, there needs to be a market, a platform where they can be traded. And I think most important, there have to be parties that value ecosystem services and that are willing to pay for them. So that are the steps that need to be taken. And well, I just looked, could this be done and what needs to be done in order to create this market? Well, first I looked at the measurement, and I think there's still already a lot of ecosystem services that can be measured. We can measure air pollution, we can measure the number of water that's being stored, we can measure carbon credits. So a lot of things can already be measured. There's even some measurements on biodiversity, which is quite a difficult part. And if we look at the monetization, there's also quite a lot of ecosystem services that can already be expressed in euros. And like we know what fine dust costs, the health cost of it, so you know how to what the value of less fine dust or less carbon credits is. But there's only very little ecosystems that can be traded on a market. The carbon credits actually are about the only one that can really be traded and that really result in cash. So what we need is that the number of ecosystems that can be traded, that has to be increased. And how can we realize that so that you can not only trade carbon credits, but also the other benefits of green? Well, first, I think you need another financial instrument. Like you have the carbon credits, we will need eco-credits. That is sort of a guarantee of origin that a certain amount of ecosystem services have been created. And then you need investors in greenery that receive the eco-credits. They can be on the supply side. So that will be the municipalities or residents or companies that invest in greenery and that will receive eco-credits. And then the most difficult part is the parties that will buy the eco-credits, that will really value them and will be able to pay cash for the eco-credits. And I think there is two groups that may be interested in buying eco-credits. Either it are sustainable investors or companies. And then the question is, why would sustainable investors and company be willing to pay cash for eco-credits? Well, I think sustainable investors have different reasons to do that. Certificates pay out 0% dividend. And if you have a large balance account, I don't know how it is in your country, but nowadays in the Netherlands, you will have to pay 0.5% interest if you have a large saving account. And in this case, it's 0%. So that's already 0.5% higher. And in the Netherlands, we have facilities for green investments that give tax benefits. So if you could have tax benefit facilities also on eco-credits, that would be extra interesting. And of course, like with the Bitcoin, the future increase in value that you expect, that is the main reason for people to go into Bitcoins. Well, you could argue that eco-credits will also have a higher value in the future. And later on, I will show you why this is quite realizable. And at last, sustainable investors have an intrinsic motivation to contribute to a green, pleasant, healthy, and sustainable environment. So that is an extra reason for sustainable investors. And for companies, I think with the carbon credits, for companies, it is a license to operate. There is law for them that they either have to reduce their carbon emissions or they have to compensate their carbon emissions. And the question is this license to operate also going to be there for the harm you do to nature, to the ecosystems? And I will show you that today is a very important day for this. And for companies, there's also companies that want to have a green reputation because that will attract extra customers. And there's also companies, not too much, but there is companies that will be willing to invest out of an intrinsic motivation because they will show they have positive impact on nature. So a lot of reasons that would be there to buy the eco-credits I introduced to you. And this one I couldn't find in English, but I told today is a very important day because today the European Parliament will vote for a law that will make companies responsible for the damage they do to people's health and to the environment. And if this law is accepted, it will take 3 years until this law is really introduced. And then there will be a very important thing like with the carbon emissions that you are responsible and that you are obliged to invest in production methods that are less harmful to the environment. And if you are not able to do that, there have to be some kind of compensation, like with the carbon credits. So I think the idea of the eco-credits really suits well with this development. And the interesting thing of this vision of the European Union, they said we have actually a pyramid that's been turned upside down, and it's the zero pollution hierarchy. So first, companies should invest in preventing pollution. Then they should minimize the pollution and control it. And only the last thing is to eliminate and remediate it. And I think today it's the other way up. And the focus is on if there's too much pollution, you make it smaller. No, now you have to invest in prevention. And in that way, you encourage innovation and you protect health and environment. And I think this development at the European level really helps the idea of capitalizing on ecosystem services. Because back to the Ecocredits thing, if you are able to have that Ecocredit funds that gives the Ecocredits to investors in green, there's more investments in green and our cities will become greener. And on the other side, there's an incentive for companies to become less pollutive. And if they cannot do that, to compensate for their damage to nature. So that would really help make our cities greener, have them look like this with a lot of green, a pleasant environment in the cities, but also healthy, sustainable, climate adaptive. And well, that's what I hope, that thinking about a different way of capitalizing on ecosystem services will help make our cities look like this. Thank you very much.